Hello, and thank you for being here at Infidelity Tales Lab. Your presence makes sharing these stories worthwhile. Tell us, where are you tuning in from today? Big city? Small town? Share with us in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Anniversary Overture. The grand ballroom of Emerald Gardens pulsed with life under the warm glow of crystal chandeliers. Howard Delgado stood near the entrance, his tall frame commanding attention without effort. At 38, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had built his empire from nothing. His perfectly tailored black suit accentuated his broad shoulders, and his steely gray eyes scanned the room. "Another glass of champagne, sir?" A server approached with a silver tray. Howard's lips curved into a practiced smile. "Thank you." He took the flute, his movements deliberate and controlled. The bubbles danced in the crystal glass, much like the tension brewing beneath his composed exterior. Across the room, his wife Elsa held court among a group of socialites. At 37, she remained striking, her midnight blue gown hugging her curves, diamond earrings catching the light with each laugh. But Howard noticed how her eyes kept darting toward the bar, where Mickey Hernandez lounged with predatory ease. "Darling," Elsa's voice carried as she approached Howard, her perfume preceding her. "Isn't this just perfect?" She placed a manicured hand on his arm, but her touch lacked warmth. Howard covered her hand with his, a gesture that appeared loving to observers but held no emotion. 10 years deserves celebration, doesn't it? Mickey chose that moment to saunter over, his 35-year-old frame carrying the cockiness of a man who thought he held all the cards. "Congratulations to the happy couple." He raised his glass, a smirk playing at his lips. Howard watched the subtle exchange of glances between his wife and the architect. A conversation without words, loaded with meaning. He'd seen it countless times over the past 2 years, each glance another nail in the coffin of their marriage. "Mickey," Howard acknowledged with a slight nod. "I'm glad you could make it. Your recent projects have been interesting." Mickey's smirk faltered for a moment. "Business is booming. Can't complain." "Indeed." Howard's response carried weight, though neither Mickey nor Elsa caught the underlying threat. The orchestra struck up a new melody, and couples began filling the dance floor. Howard turned to his wife, maintaining the facade. "Shall we?" As they moved across the floor, Howard led with practiced ease. Other couples commented on how perfect they looked together. The successful businessman and his beautiful wife, a modern-day power couple. If only they knew the viper he held in his arms. "I remember when we first danced," Elsa murmured, playing her part. "You were so nervous." Howard's grip tightened imperceptibly. "Things change, don't they?" The music swelled, and Howard spun her out, noting how her eyes immediately sought Mickey. The architect stood at the edge of the dance floor, his possessive gaze following Elsa's movements. Howard pulled her back in, perhaps with more force than necessary. "Is something wrong?" Elsa asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. "Wrong? No, everything is exactly as it should be." The dance ended, and Howard guided them toward the center of the room. The time had come. He clinked his glass, drawing attention. The room quieted as he began his speech. 10 years ago, I married what I thought was the love of my life," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed room. "A decade of memories, growth, and—" He paused for effect. "Surprises?" Elsa shifted beside him, her smile becoming fixed. She hadn't expected him to speak first. "I'd like to make a special announcement," she interrupted, her voice slightly too loud. Howard stepped back, allowing her the spotlight she so desperately craved. "I want everyone to know," Elsa continued, gaining confidence with each word, "that I've been cheating since day one of our marriage." The room collectively gasped. "I'm leaving you tonight, Howard. I hope you find someone better." The music screeched to a halt. Glasses stopped mid-clink. All eyes bounced between Howard and Elsa like a tennis match. Howard's response wasn't what anyone expected, least of all Elsa. He smiled, not the warm smile of earlier, but something colder, harder. "To new beginnings, then," he said, raising his glass in a mock toast. Elsa's triumphant expression faltered. This wasn't the reaction she'd anticipated. Where was the anger? The hurt? The public humiliation she'd planned to inflict? The double doors burst open with theatrical timing. Isaac Kaufman strode in, his silver hair and sharp suit marking him as Howard's longtime lawyer. He carried a leather briefcase with purpose, making his way directly to the couple. Mr. Delgado. Isaac's voice carried just enough to reach interested ears. The papers you requested. He withdrew a thick envelope, handing it to Howard with practiced efficiency. Elsa's face drained of color as recognition dawned. Divorce papers. She'd been outmaneuvered. As instructed, Isaac continued, his voice deliberately carrying, "Everything is prepared. Though I must say, Mr. Hernandez better hope this is just a divorce for your sake." Howard took the envelope, his movements unhurried. "Thank you, Isaac. Your timing, as always, is impeccable." The whispers started, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Elsa stood frozen, her perfect plan crumbling around her. Mickey had pushed off from the bar, taking a step forward before Howard's cold gaze pinned him in place. "Stay right there, Mickey." Howard's voice carried authority that couldn't be ignored. "Your surprise is coming. Be patient." Camera flashes began popping as phones came out. This wasn't just an anniversary party anymore. It was a society scandal in the making. Howard had transformed Elsa's moment of triumph into her public undoing. "You planned this," she hissed, grabbing his arm. "You knew." Howard removed her hand as if touching something distasteful. "For 2 years, darling. You weren't as clever as you thought." He turned to the stunned crowd. "Please, enjoy the rest of the evening. The bar is open, and the night is young." Isaac stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Elsa's elbow. "Mrs. Delgado, if you'll come with me. We have some matters to discuss." "Take your hands off me," she snarled, but Isaac's grip remained firm. "Now, Mrs. Delgado." Isaac's voice held no room for argument. "Unless you'd prefer to discuss certain financial discrepancies in front of our audience?" The fight drained from Elsa's posture. She allowed Isaac to guide her toward the exit, her head held high despite her defeat. Mickey made another attempt to follow, but Howard's voice stopped him cold. "Mickey." The name carried venom despite Howard's pleasant tone. "I wouldn't leave just yet. You want to hear what comes next?" The architect froze, uncertainty finally cracking his confident facade. The crowd parted around him like water around a stone, leaving him isolated in his shame. Howard surveyed the room, noting the mixed expressions of shock, scandal, and morbid fascination. He'd given them something to talk about for months to come. More importantly, he'd seized control of the narrative. Elsa thought she would humiliate him, but he'd turned her moment of triumph into the beginning of her downfall. A toast. He raised his glass once more. To truth, consequences, and the price of betrayal. The room raised their glasses automatically, caught in the gravity of his presence. Even those who moments ago had pitted him now looked at him with a mixture of fear and respect. Howard Delgado wasn't a victim. He was a predator who had been patiently waiting to strike. Cameron Hardy, Howard's business partner and closest friend, appeared at his side. "Quite a show," he muttered, "though I still say you should have handled it more aggressively." Howard's lips twitched. "Patience, old friend. This is just the opening act." He checked his watch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting to attend." He strode from the ballroom, leaving chaos in his wake. The carefully orchestrated evening had gone exactly as planned. Now it was time for Phase 2. Chapter 2, The Spider's Web. The aftermath of the anniversary party rippled through the city's elite circles like a stone thrown into still water. Howard Delgado's penthouse office buzzed with activity as he coordinated the next phase of his plan. Cameron Hardy paced the room, his usual boisterous nature subdued by the coldness radiating from his friend. 2 years. Cameron shook his head in disbelief. "You knew for 2 years and never said a word." Howard stood at his desk, reviewing documents with laser focus. "Would you have been able to keep quiet?" "Hell no," Cameron admitted. "I'd have confronted them immediately. Probably would have thrown Mickey through a window, which is exactly why I didn't tell you." Howard signed another document with deliberate strokes. "Emotion makes people sloppy. I needed precision." A knock at the door interrupted them. Luther Blevins entered, his ex-cop demeanor evident in his straight-back stance. He carried a thick folder under one arm. "Mr. Delgado," Luther nodded. The latest surveillance report on Mr. Hernandez and Mrs. Delgado. Howard gestured to his desk. Show me. Luther spread out photographs and documents. Images of Elsa and Mickey at various locations, bank statements, phone records, 2 years of their lives documented in meticulous detail. They've moved into her apartment on Fifth Avenue, Luther reported. Mr. Hernandez seems quite pleased with himself. He's been making calls about new business ventures, throwing your name around quite liberally. Howard's expression darkened. Is that so? Yes, sir. He's scheduled meetings with several of your regular clients, implying he has inside information about your company's practices. Cameron slammed his fist on the desk. That little snake. Let me handle this, Howard. I'll make sure he never works in this city again. No. Howard's voice was quiet but firm. We stick to the plan? Luther, what about the shell company? Luther pulled out another document. Everything's in place. Bert Fish exists on paper only. The moment Mickey signs that contract, his down payment will vanish into accounts even he can't trace. And Elsa's financial advisor? Neil Higgins is fully cooperating. He's already begun suggesting high-risk investments. Between those and her current spending habits, she'll burn through her accessible funds within months. Howard nodded, satisfied. And the PR campaign? Tricia Pearson has everything prepared. The moment Mickey's reputation starts to crack, she'll make sure everyone knows about his questionable business practices. Cameron whistled low. You really have thought of everything. Almost, Howard corrected. Luther, I need you to step up surveillance on their apartment. I want to know the moment they start turning on each other. Yes, sir. Luther gathered his materials. One more thing. Mickey's been bragging at his club. Says he's finally beaten you at your own game. A cold smile played at Howard's lips. Has he now? Well, we'll see about that. After Luther left, Cameron studied his friend with concern. I've never seen this side of you, Howard. It's unsettling. You've never seen me betrayed before. Howard's voice carried an edge that made Cameron step back. They thought I was weak because I'm quiet. Because I prefer to avoid confrontation. They mistook patience for weakness, Cameron. That's a mistake they'll never make again. And what about the company? Well, you've been planning this revenge. Howard cut him off by sliding a folder across the desk. Cameron opened it, and his eyes widened. These profit margins... How? You think I've only been focused on Elsa and Mickey? I've been building something bigger. Something they can't touch. Howard pulled up a presentation on his computer. While they've been playing their little games, I've been consolidating power. That government contract everyone said was impossible? It's ours now. Cameron flipped through the papers with growing amazement. The Mar deal too? Howard, this is what happens when people underestimate me. Howard stood, straightening his tie. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with Alfonso Hudson, the corporate spy. What are you planning now? Howard paused at the door. Mickey wants to play in the big leagues? Let's see how he handles real competition. Across town, Mickey and Elsa celebrated in their new apartment, unaware of the web closing around them. Mickey poured champagne while Elsa lounged on their new sofa. Did you see his face? Mickey laughed. All that control, and he couldn't even react properly. Pathetic. Elsa sipped her champagne, but something nagged at her. It was too easy, Mickey. Howard never loses control like that. Baby, he's just a businessman who got too wrapped up in his work. He never appreciated what he had. Mickey pulled her close. But I do. Mr. Hernandez, a voice interrupted from the doorway. They turned to see Luther, though they didn't know his role. A delivery for you. He handed Mickey a contract. Mickey's eyes lit up as he read. The Fisher Development Project? This is huge. Luther watched him passively as Mickey signed without reading the fine print. Another strand of the web secured. Back in his penthouse, Howard received Luther's confirmation. Everything was proceeding according to plan. He picked up a photo from his desk, his wedding photo. Without emotion, he dropped it into the shredder. You wanted a war, he murmured. Now you'll learn what that really means. Chapter 3. The Gathering Storm. The exclusive boardroom at the top of Delgado Tower hummed with tension. Howard sat at the head of the table, his presence commanding attention without effort. Isaac Kaufman stood at the windows, his reflection showing concern in his aged features. The divorce papers are ready, Isaac began, but Howard, We need to discuss the extent of what you're planning. Howard's fingers drummed a steady rhythm on the polished table. You have concerns? Concerns? Isaac turned, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. What you're proposing goes beyond revenge. This is destruction on a scale that they deserve. Howard finished firmly, standing to face Isaac. They made their choice. Now they'll face the consequences. Isaac adjusted his tie, a nervous habit Howard had noticed over their years of association. And your response is to destroy them completely? There are other ways to handle this. Howard stood, his movement deliberate and controlled. Do you know what Mickey's been doing? He's been approaching my clients, suggesting that my company is unstable, that I'm emotionally compromised. A cold smile played at his lips. He's right about one thing. I am compromised, just not in the way he thinks. The door opened, and Alfonso Hudson slipped in. The corporate espionage expert carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone used to operating in shadows. Mr. Delgado, Alfonso nodded. I have the information you requested. Howard gestured for him to continue. Alfonso spread documents across the table, bank statements, emails, phone records. Mickey's made several interesting moves lately, Alfonso reported. He's leveraged himself to the hilt, betting everything on the Fisher development project. Isaac picked up one of the documents, his eyes widening. This contract, it's not real, is it? Bert Fish doesn't exist, Howard confirmed. When Mickey's down payment vanishes, it will trigger a cascade of financial problems. His other investors will panic, his credit will freeze. And Elsa? Isaac asked quietly. Howard's expression hardened. Neil Higgins has been very helpful in managing her finances. She's burning through money faster than she realizes. When Mickey's empire crumbles, she'll fall with him. The PR campaign is ready too, Alfonso added. Trisha Pearson has assembled quite a file on Mickey's less-than-ethical business practices. One word from you, and his reputation is destroyed. Isaac sank into a chair. Howard, I've known you for years. This isn't you. No. Howard's voice carried dangerous undertones. Perhaps you never really knew me at all. Perhaps none of them did. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Delgado, Mr. Hardy is here. Send him in. Cameron burst into the room with his usual energy, but stopped short at the tension. What did I miss? Just reviewing the next phase, Howard replied smoothly. Alfonso, show him. As Cameron reviewed the documents, his expression grew increasingly troubled. Howard, this will destroy them completely. He looked up at his friend, searching for any sign of the man he once knew. Are you absolutely certain about this? You're still thinking like it's a normal business decision, Howard replied, his voice carrying an edge that made everyone in the room tense. This isn't about business anymore. This is about justice. Cameron ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his movements. Justice? Or revenge? Is there a difference? Howard's question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Alfonso cleared his throat, drawing attention back to the documents. There's more, Mr. Delgado. We've uncovered some interesting connections between Mr. Hernandez and several of your competitors. Howard's eyes narrowed. Show me. The corporate spy pulled out another folder, spreading its contents across the table. Emails, meeting records, and financial transactions painted a picture of Mickey's attempts to undermine Howard's business even before the affair became public. He's been feeding information to Harrison Global for months, Alfonso explained. Trying to sabotage your deals from the inside. Cameron slammed his fist on the table. That treacherous little. Calm down. Howard cut him off. This is exactly what we needed. He turned to Isaac. Still think I'm going too far? The lawyer studied the new evidence, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. This changes things legally, but Howard, the scale of what you're planning will match the scale of their betrayal, Howard finished. Luther has more surveillance reports coming in. I want to know every move they make, person they talk to, deal they try to close. As if on cue, Luther entered the room, carrying a fresh stack of photos and reports. Sir, you'll want to see this. The images showed Mickey and Elsa at various high-end establishments, celebrating their perceived victory. Their expressions were triumphant, carefree, the look of people who thought they'd won. They're planning a party, Luther reported. to celebrate their new beginning. They've invited half of your business associates. Howard's lips curved into a cold smile. Perfect. Let them celebrate. Let them think they've won. He turned to Alfonso. How long until the Fisher development trap is ready? Everything's in place. The moment he signs. Good. Howard gathered the documents into a neat pile. Cameron, I need you to focus on the legitimate side of the business. Keep our partners calm. Maintain our image. Isaac, prepare the legal framework for what's coming. Alfonso, keep digging. I want everything you can find on both of them. And me, sir? Luther asked. Stay on them. I want to know the moment they start to crack. Howard's gaze swept the room, meeting each person's eyes in turn. Remember, none of this works unless they feel completely secure. Let them think they've succeeded. Let them celebrate. Cameron stood, shaking his head. I still say we should just confront them directly. Old school. That's exactly what they'd expect, Howard replied. They think they know me. The quiet, controlled businessman who avoids confrontation. They'll learn how wrong they are, but not yet. Not until it's too late for them to do anything about it. Isaac gathered his briefcase, pausing at the door. Howard, once this starts, there's no going back. I know. Howard's voice was cold, final. They made their choice 2 years ago. Now they'll live with the consequences. After everyone left, Howard stood at his window, watching the city below. In the reflection, he saw not the successful businessman everyone thought they knew, but something darker, more dangerous. His phone buzzed, a message from Luther with a new photo. Mickey and Elsa, toasting with champagne in their new apartment. Howard zoomed in on their smiling faces, his expression hardening. Enjoy it while you can, he murmured. The storm is coming. Chapter 4. The cracks appear. Mickey Hernandez sat at his desk, staring at the contract before him with hungry eyes. The Fisher Development Project, a $50 million residential complex that would cement his reputation in the industry. His fingers trembled slightly as he reached for his Mont Blanc pen. This is it, baby, he called out to Elsa, who lounged on the Italian leather sofa in his office. The big break we've been waiting for. Elsa sipped her champagne, her third glass of the morning. Are you sure about this, Mickey? It seems too good to be true. Too good. Mickey laughed, signing with a flourish. This is what we deserve. Howard's not the only one who can play in the big leagues. The contract bore the letterhead of Burt Fish Development Corporation, promising substantial returns on Mickey's initial investment. He wrote the check without hesitation, $2 million of his liquid assets, nearly draining his accounts. Send this over to Mr. Fish immediately, Mickey instructed his secretary. And order more champagne. We're celebrating. Across town, in a nondescript office, Luther Blevins watched through surveillance cameras as Mickey sealed his fate. He picked up a secure phone. It's done, Mr. Delgado. He signed everything. Howard's voice came through, cold and satisfied. How much? $2 million, sir. Almost everything he has. Good. Initiate Phase 2. Mickey's celebration lasted exactly 3 days. On the 4th morning, his bankers called. The check had cleared, but the receiving account had vanished. Burt Fish Development Corporation didn't exist. Not in any registry. Not in any database. What do you mean it's gone? Mickey shouted into his phone. That's impossible. I have the contract right here. His lawyer's voice was grim. The company doesn't exist, Mickey. The address is a vacant lot. The phone numbers are disconnected. This looks like a sophisticated fraud. Then call the police. With what? The shell company's gone. The money's been routed through offshore accounts. Filing charges would cost more than you have left, and the chances of recovery are minimal. Mickey slumped in his chair, his designer suit suddenly feeling too tight. His phone buzzed, another banker calling about missed payments on his property loans. Elsa burst into his office, her face pale. Mickey, my cards aren't working. None of them. Not now, baby. I'm dealing with... No, you don't understand, she interrupted. My accounts are frozen. My financial advisor said something about irregular activities being investigated. Mickey loosened his tie, sweat beading on his forehead. It's fine. We'll figure it out. I just need to make some calls. His phone rang again. The display showed his biggest client's name. Mr. Peterson, I was just about to... Save it, Hernandez. Peterson's voice was cold. We're pulling our contracts. All of them. What? Why? Let's just say we received some interesting information about your business practices. Don't bother calling back. The line went dead. Mickey's phone immediately lit up with more calls, other clients, all canceling. His empire was crumbling in real time. In his penthouse office, Howard watched the destruction through Luther's live updates. Cameron stood beside him, shaking his head in amazement. The fake company, the frozen accounts, the client exodus, all coordinated perfectly, Cameron marveled. You've destroyed him without leaving a single fingerprint. Howard's expression remained impassive. This is just the beginning. Alfonso, report. The corporate espionage expert stepped forward from the shadows. The PR campaign is ready, sir. Ms. Pearson has assembled quite a file on Mr. Hernandez's creative accounting practices. Release it. All of it? That will destroy his reputation completely. Howard's eyes glinted. That's the point. Within hours, business news websites began running stories about Mickey Hernandez's questionable dealings. Anonymous sources provided documentation of cut corners, bribes, and safety violations. His phone stopped ringing as clients fled en masse. Elsa watched Mickey unravel with growing horror. The confident, charismatic man she'd left Howard for was dissolving before her eyes. We need to do something, she demanded. Call Howard. Apologize. Offer him whatever he wants. Mickey hurled his glass against the wall. You think this is Howard? No, he's too soft for this. Too controlled. This is just bad luck. A string of coincidences. Elsa grabbed his arm. Coincidences? Wake up, Mickey. This is Howard. He's destroying us, piece by piece. He's not capable of this. Mickey shouted, but doubt crept into his voice. In his office, Howard reviewed Luther's surveillance photos of their argument with cold satisfaction. How are their finances looking? Mr. Hernandez is essentially bankrupt, Luther reported. The fake company took most of his liquid assets. The canceled contracts killed his cash flow. His properties are mortgaged to the hilt, and the banks are calling in the loans. And Elsa, Neil Higgins has been very helpful. Her investment portfolio is down 60% following his advice. Her credit cards are maxed out. She's burning through cash, trying to maintain their lifestyle. Howard nodded. Remind me to give Neil a bonus. What's their next move? Luther checked his notes. They're planning to sell some of Elsa's jewelry to raise capital. A cold smile played at Howard's lips. Yes, the jewelry. Tell me, Luther, how much did our jeweler charge to replace all her diamonds with cubic zirconia 2 years ago? A fraction of their apparent value, sir. She has no idea they're worthless. Howard turned to Cameron. Watch closely, old friend. This is how you destroy someone completely. Not with violence or threats, but by taking away everything they value, piece by piece, until they destroy themselves. Chapter 5. The Noose Tightens. The jewelry appraiser adjusted his loupe, examining Elsa's tennis bracelet with growing concern. I'm sorry, Mrs. Delgado, but this isn't a real diamond bracelet. What? Elsa snatched it back. That's impossible. Howard gave me this for our 5th anniversary. The appraiser shook his head. It's a very good fake, but it's cubic zirconia. All of these pieces are. Elsa's hands shook as she gathered her jewelry. The Cartier necklace from their 7th anniversary, the sapphire earrings from their trip to Paris, all worthless imitations. She stumbled out of the shop, her mind racing. Howard, she whispered. He switched them. He's been planning this for years. Her phone buzzed Mickey again. She ignored it. He'd been calling constantly since the Fisher development disaster, growing more desperate with each passing day. His reputation was in tatters, his business collapsing. Meanwhile, Howard sat in a meeting with Alfonso Hudson, reviewing the latest developments. The PR campaign has exceeded expectations, Alfonso reported. Every major business publication has picked up the story. His reputation is destroyed. Howard examined the headlines on his tablet. Mickey Hernandez. The fall of an architecture empire. Safety violations, bribes, and fraud. The true story of Mickey Hernandez. Excellent work, Howard nodded. And the legal situation? Our anonymous tips to the authorities have triggered multiple investigations. The evidence is overwhelming. Cameron whistled low. You really did keep records of everything. 2 years of surveillance, Howard confirmed. Every corrupt deal, bribe, corner cut. I just waited for the right moment to expose it all. His phone buzzed, Luther calling. Sir, you need to see this. They're fighting. Howard pulled up the surveillance feed on his computer. Mickey and Elsa's voices filled the room, caught by Luther's hidden microphones. This is your fault, Mickey shouted. If you hadn't insisted on that public announcement, hadn't tried to humiliate him. My fault? Elsa screamed back. You're the one who lost everything. The great Mickey Hernandez, brought down by a simple con. How does it feel to be so stupid? Watch what you say to me, Mickey growled, advancing on her. You're nothing without me. You think you can go back to Howard now? After what you did? Don't touch me. You're pathetic. A fraud. I should have stayed with. The sound of a slap cut through the feed. Howard's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened on his armrest. Sir? Luther's voice was concerned. Should I intervene? No. Howard's voice was ice. Let them destroy each other. But keep recording. It might be useful later. Cameron shifted uncomfortably. Howard, this is getting dark. Maybe it's enough. Enough? Howard turned to his friend. They betrayed me. Tried to humiliate me. Thought they could take everything I built. No, Cameron. This isn't nearly enough. His phone rang. Isaac Kaufman. The arrest warrant is ready, the lawyer reported. Police are moving in within the hour. Good. Make sure the press is there. The next hours unfolded exactly as Howard had planned. Police cars surrounded Mickey's office building, lights flashing. News cameras captured his arrest, his designer's suit wrinkled, his face twisted in rage. This is a mistake, he shouted as they led him away in handcuffs. I'm being framed. Howard Delgado is behind this. But Howard was across town in a very public meeting with government officials, signing a major infrastructure contract. The perfect alibi. Elsa watched Mickey's arrest on television, her hands shaking as she poured another drink. Her phone had been cut off, her credit cards declined. She was alone in their luxury apartment, but the electricity wouldn't last much longer. The bills were overdue. She grabbed her keys, heading for Howard's penthouse. Surely he would listen. Surely there was still some part of him that cared. The security guard stopped her in the lobby. I'm sorry, Mrs. Delgado. You're not permitted upstairs. But I need to see him. Please. Just 5 minutes. Ma'am, if you don't leave voluntarily, we'll have to escort you out. Her screams echoed through the lobby as they removed her. Up in his penthouse, Howard watched the security feed silently. She's desperate, Cameron observed. Maybe now. Now nothing. Howard cut him off. They made their choice 2 years ago. Actions have consequences. He turned to Luther. How close are we to the final phase? Everything's in place, sir. Just awaiting your order. Howard stood, walking to his window. Below, he could see Elsa being driven away in a taxi. Then let's finish this. Release everything. Chapter 6. The Point of No Return. Mickey paced his cell, his designer clothes exchanged for prison orange. His lawyers had abandoned him. He couldn't pay their fees. The evidence against him was overwhelming, decades of corruption exposed in meticulous detail. Visitor, the guard announced. Howard sat on the other side of the glass, impeccable in his tailored suit. Mickey grabbed the phone with trembling hands. You did this, he hissed. Somehow, you orchestrated all of it. Howard's voice was calm. You did this to yourself, Mickey. I just made sure you face the consequences. I'll tell everyone. The press, the police. Tell them what? That I somehow forced you to take bribes? Made you cut corners on safety regulations? Convinced you to sign a contract without due diligence? Howard's smile was terrible to behold. No, Mickey. You destroyed yourself. I just helped the process along. Why? Because of Elsa? She wasn't happy with you. You were never there. Howard's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped to a whisper that made Mickey's blood freeze. This was never about happiness. This was about loyalty, about trust, about consequences. He stood to leave. Mickey pressed against the glass. Wait, I can help you. I know things about your competitors. Goodbye, Mickey. Enjoy prison. Oh, and don't bother trying to contact Elsa. She's having problems of her own. Across town, Elsa stood in her new apartment, a tiny studio in a bad neighborhood. Her designer clothes were gone, sold for rent money. She'd taken a job as a waitress, the only work she could find with her now toxic name. Her phone rang. A reporter wanting comment on the new allegations. Tax fraud, money laundering, complicity in Mickey's crimes. The evidence was damning, though she had no idea how they'd obtained it. There was a knock at her door. 2 federal agents stood outside, warrant in hand. Mrs. Delgado? You're under arrest for tax evasion and conspiracy to commit fraud. She didn't resist as they led her away. What was the point? Howard had won. He'd taken everything, their reputation, their freedom, their dignity. In his office, Howard reviewed the final reports. Mickey and Elsa's lives were in ruins, their downfall documented in excruciating detail. Cameron watched him with a mixture of awe and fear. It's done, Cameron said quietly. They're destroyed. Was it worth it? Howard closed the file. Ask me again in 10 years. He stood straightening his tie. Now we have a company to run. That's it? Back to business as usual? No. Howard's voice was soft. Nothing will be usual again. But everyone will remember what happens to those who betray me. That's worth everything. The sun set on the city, and Howard Delgado stood at his window, master of all he surveyed. The price of betrayal had been paid in full. Chapter 7. The Final Judgment. Mickey Hernandez crouched in the back seat of a taxi, his designer clothes replaced by cheap department store attire. The border crossing loomed ahead, his last chance at escape. His hands clutched a fake passport, another desperate measure that would prove futile. Pull over here, he instructed the driver, not wanting to get too close to the official checkpoint. The night provided some cover as he approached on foot, trying to blend in with a group of tourists. Papers, the border agent demanded. Mickey's hands trembled as he presented the forged documents. The agent studied them, then made a call. Within minutes, police vehicles surrounded him. Mr. Hernandez, an officer approached, handcuffs ready. You're under arrest for financial fraud, corruption, and attempting to flee prosecution. In his office, Howard watched the arrest footage on multiple screens. Luther stood nearby, providing commentary. He never had a chance, sir. We've been tracking him since he left his apartment. And Elsa, still working her waitressing job, unaware that the tax fraud investigation is about to conclude. Howard nodded, satisfaction evident in his posture. Show me the evidence package one more time. Luther spread out documents across Howard's desk. Years of financial records, falsified tax returns, evidence of Elsa's complicity in Mickey's schemes. All carefully preserved, dated, and verified. The prosecution has everything they need, Luther confirmed. The DA is particularly interested in their joint business ventures. The money laundering charges alone could put them away for years. Cameron burst into the office, tablet in hand. Have you seen the news? They're calling it the fraud case of the decade. Howard's expression remained neutral. And our involvement? Completely hidden. Everyone thinks the evidence came from a routine audit. Your name isn't mentioned anywhere. Good. Now we wait. The wait wasn't long. 3 days later, federal agents approached Elsa during her shift at the diner. Mrs. Delgado? An agent flashed his badge. We need you to come with us. Elsa dropped her serving tray. What is this about? Tax fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy charges. You have a right to remain silent. The other customers recorded on their phones as Elsa was led out in handcuffs, her new uniform replaced by prison orange within hours. In the federal detention center, Mickey and Elsa found themselves sharing a holding cell, a final twist of Howard's knife. This is your fault, Elsa screamed, launching herself at Mickey. You and your stupid schemes. Guards rushed in to separate them as Mickey shouted back. You're the one who couldn't keep your mouth shut. Had to make a scene at the party. Howard reviewed the security footage with cold satisfaction. How long until their trial? Isaac consulted his notes. Fast-tracked due to public interest. 2 weeks at most. The evidence is overwhelming. They'll likely plead bargain. No deals. Howard's voice was steel. I want them to face everything. Cameron shifted uncomfortably. They're already ruined, Howard. Maybe nothing. They chose this path. Now they'll walk it to the end. The trial was brief but spectacular. Prosecutors presented mountains of evidence. Each document, each transaction, each illegal deal meticulously documented. Mickey and Elsa's lawyers, public defenders since they couldn't afford better, were overwhelmed. Howard attended each day, sitting silently in the back row, his presence a constant reminder of their downfall. The verdicts came quickly, guilty on all counts. The judge, influenced by letters Howard had arranged to be sent from Mickey's defrauded clients, showed no mercy. 20 years, Luther reported. Each of them. No possibility of parole for at least 15. Howard stood at his office window, looking out over his domain. Transfer them to separate maximum security facilities. I want them to serve their time alone. Already arranged, sir. Different states, different security levels. Cameron watched his friend with growing unease. Is it enough now, Howard? Have they paid enough? Howard turned, his eyes cold. They'll never pay enough. But this will do. Chapter 8. The Price of Betrayal. The high-security prison cell felt like a tomb to Elsa. Gone were the designer clothes, the luxury apartments, the social status. Her orange jumpsuit hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight since her arrest. A guard approached her cell. Visitor. She shuffled to the visiting area, hands and feet shackled. Through the thick glass, Howard sat waiting, impeccable in his suit. Why? Her voice cracked. Why did you do this to us? I didn't do this to you. Howard's voice was calm. You did this to yourselves. I merely ensured you faced the consequences. I'm sorry. Tears streaked her makeup-free face. I was wrong. We can start over. No, Howard cut her off. We can't. There is no starting over. No forgiveness. No second chances. You made your choice 10 years ago. Now you live with it. In another prison, 2 states away, Mickey paced his cell like a caged animal. His cellmate watched with growing annoyance. Sit down, rich boy, the man growled. Your pacing won't change anything. Mickey slumped onto his bunk. His reputation was destroyed, his career over. News channels still ran stories about his crimes, each revelation more damning than the last. A guard appeared. Hernandez. Visitor. Howard sat behind the glass, studying Mickey like an interesting specimen. Come to gloat. Mickey spat. No need, Howard replied. Your situation speaks for itself. I'll tell everyone what you did, how you set us up, with what proof. Face it, Mickey. You're nothing now. Less than nothing. Just another convicted felon serving his time. Back in his office, Howard reviewed the prison visit recordings with Cameron. Was it necessary to see them? Cameron asked. To twist the knife? Yes. Howard's voice was firm. They needed to understand. This isn't just punishment. It's a message. Nobody betrays me without consequences. The media circus continued. Talk shows dissected Mickey and Elsa's fall from grace. Financial magazines wrote cautionary tales about their schemes. Their names became synonymous with betrayal and fraud. Howard's empire grew stronger. New contracts poured in as competitors faltered. His reputation for business acumen soared, while any connection to Mickey and Elsa's downfall remained hidden. In their separate prisons, the former lovers faced their new reality. Elsa's beauty faded under harsh fluorescent lights and prison food. Mickey's confidence crumbled under the weight of daily humiliations. Luther provided regular updates on their deterioration. Mrs. Delgado attempted to contact her old social circle. He reported. None responded. Mr. Hernandez tried to file another appeal. Denied immediately. Howard nodded, satisfied. Make sure they stay in separate facilities. I want them to suffer alone. Cameron watched his friend with a mixture of fear and respect. You've changed, Howard. You're stronger, Howard finished. I've become what I needed to be, what they made me become. Chapter 9. The Serpent's Shadow. 15 months into their sentences, Howard arranged one final visit to each of them. First to Mickey's prison, where the once proud architect had become a shell of himself. Please, Mickey begged. You've won. Just help me get a transfer, a better cell, anything. No, Howard's voice was ice. This is your life now. Accept it. Then to Elsa's facility, where his former wife barely resembled the beauty who had once graced magazine covers. Howard, she pressed her hand against the glass. I still love. No, you don't. He cut her off. You never did. You loved what I could give you. Now you have nothing, which is exactly what you deserve. In his office later that day, Isaac expressed concern about Howard's transformation. You've become ruthless, the lawyer warned. Cold. Is this really who you want to be? Howard straightened his tie, his movements precise and controlled. I'm not ruthless, Isaac. I'm a man who understands the value of loyalty. There's a difference. The evidence of his success surrounded them. New contracts, expanded territories, growing influence. Howard had turned his personal vendetta into professional triumph. The business world knows now, Cameron observed. Cross Howard Delgado, and you disappear. Good. Howard's voice carried finality. Let them know. Let them all know. He stood at his window, master of all he surveyed. The city stretched before him, his empire growing daily. Behind him, photos of Mickey and Elsa's arrest played on multiple screens, a constant reminder of the price of betrayal. Sir, Luther entered with a final report. They've been transferred to maximum security facilities. Different states, no possibility of contact. It's done. Howard nodded once. He picked up a photo from his desk, his wedding photo with Elsa. Without ceremony, he dropped it into the shredder. Now, he turned to Cameron, we have an empire to run. The sun set on the city as Howard Delgado stood victorious. Not just over Mickey and Elsa, but over weakness itself. He had transformed betrayal into strength, pain into power. The serpent's shadow had been cast. The price of betrayal had been paid in full. And Howard Delgado's legend was just beginning. Epilogue. 10 years later. The skyline of the city had changed dramatically in the decade since Howard Delgado's revenge reached its conclusion. New towers pierced the sky, many bearing the Delgado Industries logo. At 48, Howard sat in his expanded office suite, reviewing quarterly reports with the same precise attention he'd once given to destroying his enemies. Mr. Delgado, his new assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Hardy is here. Send him in. Cameron Hardy, now pushing 50 but still maintaining his boisterous energy, strode into the office. Time had grayed his temples, but his loyalty to Howard had never wavered. Did you see the news? Cameron tossed a tablet onto Howard's desk. The headline read, Mickey Hernandez denied parole for third time. Below was a prison photo of a gaunt, aged man who barely resembled the cocky architect who had once thought he could outsmart Howard Delgado. Luther sent a full report. Howard replied without looking at the tablet. The parole board was quite thorough in their review. Cameron sank into a chair. You're still pulling strings, aren't you? Even after all these years? I don't need to pull strings anymore, Cameron. Their crimes speak for themselves. Howard's voice carried the same cold certainty it had a decade ago. How's the Tokyo expansion? On schedule. But don't change the subject. I also heard Elsa's up for consideration next month. Howard's expression didn't change. Is she? I hadn't noticed. Bullshit. Cameron laughed without humor. You notice everything. That's why you're now one of the most powerful men in the country. Indeed, the past decade had seen Howard's influence grow exponentially. Delgado Industries had expanded into technology, healthcare, and infrastructure. His reputation for ruthless efficiency and unwavering standards had become legendary. Isaac called, Cameron continued. He's retiring next month. I know. After 30 years, he's earned it. He still worries about you, you know? Says you never really moved on. Howard stood, walking to his window. The view now encompassed twice the territory it had 10 years ago. I moved on the moment I destroyed them. Everything since has been about growth, not revenge. A knock at the door interrupted them. Luther Blevins entered, his hair now completely white, but his bearings still military straight. Sir, you asked for an update on the prison situations. Howard nodded once. Report. Mr. Hernandez remains in solitary after his latest incident. Apparently, he tried to convince a new guard he had valuable information about corporate corruption. When that failed, he became violent. And Elsa, Mrs. Delgado works in the prison library. She's been a model prisoner, but her psychological evaluation suggests severe depression and anxiety. She still attempts to write letters to you monthly, which are still redirected to the special file. Howard finished. Cameron shook his head. 10 years, Howard. They've lost everything. Their youth, their freedom, their dignity. Isn't that enough? You still don't understand, do you? Howard turned to his friend. This was never about revenge. It was about justice, about consequences, about showing the world what happens when you betray trust. The evidence of his success surrounded them. Delgado Industries had become a global powerhouse. Howard's personal worth had multiplied many times over. But more importantly, his reputation had become unassailable. No one dared cross him, personally or professionally. What about Bonnie Compton? Cameron asked. Have you heard from her? She's doing well. Running our European division now. Loyalty has its rewards, Cameron. Just as betrayal has its price. Luther cleared his throat. There's one more thing, sir. We've received intelligence that Mr. Hernandez is writing his memoirs. He's trying to paint himself as the victim of a corporate conspiracy. Howard's cold smile made both men shift uncomfortably. Let him write. Who would believe the words of a convicted felon? Besides, we have more important matters to discuss. The Senate committee needs our testimony on infrastructure development next week. Cameron watched his friend carefully. The years had hardened Howard rather than softened him. His hair had grayed at the temples, adding to his authoritative appearance, but his eyes retained their steely determination. You never remarried, Cameron observed. Never even dated seriously. I married my empire, Howard replied. It's more faithful than any person could be. A week later, Howard sat in his private study at home, reviewing old files. Photos of Mickey and Elsa in their prime were paper-clipped to documents detailing their downfall. Their destruction had been the foundation upon which he'd built his current success. His phone buzzed, a message from Luther. Mrs. Delgado's parole hearing has been scheduled. She's requested you appear as a character witness. Howard typed a single-word reply. No. In her prison cell, Elsa Delgado stared at her reflection in the small metal mirror. At 47, her beauty had been worn away by time and harsh fluorescent lights. Her once perfect hair had grown dull, her designer clothes replaced by prison-issue garments that hung loose on her thin frame. Mail call, a guard announced, pushing an envelope through the slot. Elsa's hands trembled as she opened it. Another form letter. Your request for Mr. Delgado to appear at your parole hearing has been denied. 2 states away, Mickey Hernandez sat in solitary confinement, scribbling frantically in a notebook. His once confident handwriting had become a desperate scrawl. They need to know the truth, he muttered to himself. How he set us up, how he destroyed us. But even as he wrote, he knew no one would believe him. Howard Delgado's reputation was untouchable, his power almost absolute. Mickey's words would be dismissed as the ravings of a bitter convict. Back in his office, Howard reviewed plans for his next major project, a revolutionary urban development that would transform the city's skyline once again. Mr. Delgado, his assistant buzzed. Your dinner meeting with the governor is confirmed for 8 o'clock. Thank you. And the other matter? The prison board received your foundation's generous donation for rehabilitation programs. They're very grateful. Howard allowed himself a small smile. Even his apparent acts of charity served his purposes. The donation would ensure the board remained rigorous in their parole reviews, all while enhancing his public image. Cameron entered without knocking, the only person allowed such liberty. The Tokyo deal is signed. We now control 30% of the Pacific Rim market. Good. Schedule a board meeting for next week. It's time to discuss expansion into South America. Cameron hesitated. Howard, I found this in the archives. He placed an old photo on the desk. Howard and Elsa's wedding day. Maybe it's time to... Howard cut him off by dropping the photo into his shredder without a glance. The past is dead, Cameron. I killed it myself. Now, about South America. That evening, Howard stood in his penthouse, which now occupied the top 3 floors of his newest tower. The city spread below him like a kingdom, much of it under his direct or indirect control. Luther's evening report arrived on his tablet. Mickey Hernandez, still in solitary. Mental health declining. Elsa Delgado, parole hearing scheduled for next month. Outcome predetermined. Business competitors, none presenting significant threats. Political connections, strengthening with new administration. Howard closed the report, satisfied. His revenge had evolved into something greater, a complete transformation of his world. The betrayal that might have destroyed a weaker man had instead forged him into something more powerful. The next morning, headlines announced Delgado Industries' latest acquisition, a major tech company that would increase Howard's influence in Silicon Valley. The business world buzzed with speculation about his next moves. In his office, Howard reviewed surveillance photos from both prisons. Mickey had aged 20 years in 10, his arrogance replaced by desperate paranoia. Elsa had shrunk into herself, her once proud bearing now stooped and defeated. "Sir," Luther entered with fresh reports. Mr. Hernandez attempted to contact a journalist again. "It's been handled." And Elsa's parole hearing? "The board has received comprehensive documentation of her involvement in the financial crimes. Her psychological evaluation suggests she remains unrepentant." Howard nodded. "Make sure the victims of their fraud schemes are notified. They may wish to make statements." Cameron arrived for their daily meeting, noting the prison reports on Howard's desk. "Still keeping tabs on them? After all these years?" "Knowledge is power, Cameron. I monitor everything that might affect my interests." "They're broken, Howard. Completely destroyed. Mickey's lost his mind, and Elsa's a shell of herself." "Actions have consequences," Howard replied. "They chose their path." The empire Howard had built stood as a testament to his principles. Loyalty was rewarded. Bonnie Compton ran Europe. Luther handled global security. Cameron managed international operations. Betrayal was punished. Mickey and Elsa served as cautionary tales. Their downfall a warning to anyone who might consider crossing Howard Delgado. Late that night, Howard reviewed old surveillance footage from the night of his 10th anniversary party. Elsa's announcement, his controlled reaction, the beginning of their destruction. The footage served as a reminder of the moment he'd transformed betrayal into triumph. His phone buzzed. Another letter from Elsa had arrived at the processing center. Like all the others, it would go unread into the special file Luther maintained. Some doors, once closed, remained locked forever. The next board meeting demonstrated Howard's complete dominance of his empire. Directors who had once questioned his methods now followed without hesitation. His reputation for ruthless efficiency and unwavering standards had become the stuff of business legend. "The South American expansion will proceed," he announced. "We'll begin with Brazil and Argentina." No one questioned his decision. No one dared. In her prison cell, Elsa prepared for her parole hearing, knowing in her heart it was futile. Howard's influence, though invisible, remained absolute. Her betrayal had cost her everything: youth, beauty, freedom, dignity. Mickey, in his solitary cell, continued writing his memoirs, his words becoming more unhinged with each page. The cocky architect who had thought himself clever enough to outsmart Howard Delgado had been reduced to a rambling prisoner whom even the guards ignored. Howard's empire continued to grow. New towers rose, bearing his name. Politicians sought his support. Businesses courted his partnerships. Universities offered honorary degrees. The man who had turned personal betrayal into professional triumph had become a figure of almost mythical power. "Your legacy is secure," Cameron observed during a late-night strategy session. Was it worth the cost? Howard looked out over his domain, his expression unchanging. "There was no cost, Cameron. Only investment in a truth everyone needed to learn." He turned to his friend, his eyes as cold as they'd been a decade ago. "Loyalty is rewarded. Betrayal is punished. Everything else is just business." The city lights glittered below, many of them powered by Delgado Industries subsidiaries. Howard's revenge had transformed into something far greater, a complete reshaping of his world according to his principles. The legacy of loyalty, written in steel and glass, in broken lives and built fortunes, would endure long after the original betrayal was forgotten. Howard Delgado had turned personal pain into professional power, creating an empire where his word was law and his principles were iron. In the end, it was never just about revenge. It was about creating a world where loyalty was the highest virtue and betrayal carried the ultimate price. Howard Delgado had done more than destroy his enemies. He had built a legacy that would outlast them all. And there you have it, Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.